Can you know anything in philosophy? You might think not. After all, philosophers are always disagreeing about everything. I once heard a philosopher say that for every proposition P that some philosopher accepts, there is another philosopher who rejects P. But if philosophers are always disagreeing and they've been thinking about these things for so many years, thousands of years, and they haven't been able to figure out any answers, then how can anyone know who is right? How can anyone know anything in philosophy? Even the philosopher Bertrand Russell said, "Philosophy is what you don't know." Now you might think that even if philosophy can't give you knowledge, it can still sharpen your mind and give you the power of critical thinking. But that itself is philosophical speculation. Why I think debating unanswerable questions improves your mind in the slightest. Maybe it does the opposite. Maybe it ruins your mind and sets you on a path to be poor, thinking about things that are ultimately beyond anybody's knowledge or understanding. This question about the utility of philosophy is relevant to worldview development. Why seek truths about the deepest things if you already have no hope that your search could yield any valuable fruit at all? However, in this video, I want to share with you how I think you can gain philosophical knowledge. I'll first provide an argument, and then I'm going to propose a strategy for how you can gain more insights into the things that matter most to you. So here's my argument. In this argument, I'm going to set the bar high for myself. I shall attempt to show you that a philosophical proposition can be proven to be true. So here we go. First, let P be the proposition that nothing in philosophy can be proven. Now, either P is true or it isn't true. This follows from the general principle that either A or not A for any A. Note here that I'm not assuming that P is either true or false. Maybe P is neither true nor false. It's completely indeterminate. Still, if P is not true, then it is not true. Otherwise, it is true. Here's the next premise. If P is true, then since P is a philosophical proposition, and P says that no philosophical proposition can be proven, well then it follows that P itself can't be proven. The next premise is that if P is not true, because remember there's two options, either it is or it isn't. So what happens if it isn't true? Well, if it isn't true, then P can't be proven to be true. Because if it were proven true and it's not true, then you have a contradiction. It would be true and not true. So either way, whether P is true or not, P cannot be proven to be true. That follows from the premises. Now let Q be the proposition that P cannot be proven. Q is a philosophical proposition. It's a proposition about what can be proven in philosophy. Now we just proved that Q is true. We just proved that. Therefore, since Q is a philosophical proposition, we've just proven a philosophical proposition. Therefore, it is possible to prove a philosophical proposition. Now you might think this argument is a technical trick. At best, it only proves a trivial proposition, Q. However, the argument uses logic, which itself is a branch of philosophy. It's one of the core parts of philosophy. And it uses logic to establish something that most people don't know. The argument establishes that something in philosophy can in fact be proven true. And that's not insignificant. That is itself a significant philosophical proposition. Perhaps the deeper problem is with the meaning of the term philosophy. When I use that term, it seems to convey the idea that it's just a matter of opinion. If someone claims to have discovered a philosophical fact, it sounds like an oxymoron. You might think that philosophy and fact just can't go together by definition. However, I think the reason for this impression may be that philosophers, we have a personality where we just like to question everything. So if you put a philosopher in a math class, that philosopher is going to be questioning where the mathematics came from. Are the axioms that the professor is presupposing in his proofs, are those even true? And just because the philosopher can ask that question and maybe cause doubt and speculation in any context, doesn't mean that there is no knowledge in any context, doesn't mean that we have no mathematical knowledge. The way that philosophers discover insights and knowledge is by questioning things with an aim towards seeing what's actually true. I want to leave you with a thought about how to have the most power to see the most in any area of life. This is a thought about how to see more things for yourself. I think one of the problems with philosophical disagreement is it leaves everybody sort of lost. Like who can you trust? All the experts just disagree. But if you can see things for yourself, then it makes all the difference, because then you don't have to wait for all the experts to come to some consensus before you can have any sight at all. So how do you become more powerful in your seeing? How do you see more? My thought is about working with two tools in hand, two tools together. One of your tools tests things. This is the tool of skepticism. You ask questions. You question everything. You question the foundations of math, the foundations of reason, the foundations of science, even your assumptions about philosophy. You question those. But you don't only work with that tool. You're much more powerful if you work with two tools, the tool of testing and the tool of building. Building takes courage because you are going to make mistakes. Building means you come up with a hypothesis. You stick out your neck and you say, here's what might explain this data. Maybe it's a hypothesis, it's a large-scale hypothesis about ultimate reality. And then you test that hypothesis by teasing out its logical implications and see if there are any observations that those implications are in tension with. That's a way of testing your hypothesis in any domain. And I can tell you that the more that I look into things, and it's really any topic, I think one of the problems with philosophy is that it's just a label. I mean, we're just trying to find out about reality. And we're using all the instruments and all the data we have at our disposal. And I find that wherever I look with intense curiosity, I find more things than I saw before. And I want to encourage you along those lines, that wherever you look, just by aiming for truth, you are positioning yourself to see more things. I hope this video serves you in the project of seeking to build a worldview that is beautiful, increasingly accurate, and inspiring. Thank you for watching.